you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to season 2 of the Happily Never After show. I'm your host, Kate Mollison, and I'm here with a very special friend and guest, Erin Anderson. Erin, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this week's episode, we are talking about what to do with your real estate after you lose your spouse. And Erin is an incredible real estate agent. She has personally helped me. I'm living in my dream home currently, so thanks so much for that, Erin. But talk to me a little bit about what the process is in buying a house, just starting at the basic foundational for people who haven't had to do real estate transactions.
Sure. Well, it's one of my favorite things to do is work with first-time home buyers, especially because, what I've learned by being a realtor is how much there is a lack of information for consumers. And so one of the things I pride myself on is really helping my clients feel like they are included in the process, that they're educated and informed. And I try to take a really consultative approach to the real estate process with my clients. So, basically, the first thing you have to do is talk to a realtor. Um, and finding a realtor is easy, they're everywhere, but finding the right realtor sometimes takes a little bit of work. It's asking for referrals, maybe getting some feedback from people who have worked with the realtor you're considering, looking at their reviews online. Typically, a Google search will set you off on the right foot, and if you know the name of someone, because usually the best reviewed realtors are going to be at the top of the list on Google. That's kind of how that works. So it is a really good starting point sometimes, outside of getting a personal referral from someone.
Gotta love that algorithm, right? It works wonders, I will say.
Yeah.
How did you get your start? You've been doing real estate for quite some time now. Tell everyone a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. So yeah, this is my 6th year as a licensed realtor.
Wow.
Actually started off on the back end of real estate and more of the operations side. That's where my background was in sales and sales leadership. Previously worked in an admissions world, so again, consultative sales. So it was a natural fit for me to find my way into the real estate industry. And ultimately, I made that decision because I wanted to have a bigger impact in what I did and have a more personal touch with the people I worked with. So I started off helping other realtors get their businesses up and running. And then eventually, in after my son was born in March of 2019, I decided to, or 2020, March of 2020, I decided to jump in full time with my license because at that point I was just a licensed admin. And so I knew all of the back end. It was a huge advantage for me to be able to jump right in and help my clients, because I had seen everything from the backside, dealing with contracts, with attorney issues, learned the good, the bad, and the ugly of real estate. And so I had a great first year, even though it was in the middle of COVID. Had an awesome year, helped a lot of people, and I just fell in love with it. Every day since, I absolutely love what I do.
It's really great to be a person who can come into a potentially really crappy situation, right? Like I think about my own personal experience and where I was when Craig passed away, and we were left in this like duress, my name wasn't on the mortgage, my name wasn't on the title to the house. I literally was a squatter in my own home, and I got some mediocre advice where it was do a cash out refi, and I didn't know what that was. And then I'm sending to all these different people. I'm doing so much legwork. So I think about the type of relationship that you're building with your clients and how much trauma you're mitigating just by having that background experience.
I mean, you know what, Kate, there's so many types of reasons my clients call me, but a lot of it is even if they're not looking to buy or sell, I could be the first phone call to deal with a pipe bursting or a sewer backup or like they find something in their house that wasn't disclosed, and I want people to know that no matter what, I can be a resource. It doesn't have to just be because you want to buy or sell a house. And I
Mm.
think in those situations, I have actually gotten several phone calls where someone has passed away, that I have sold a house to, and whether it's a family member because they see my magnet on the fridge from when I sold the house, or they've heard about me through their clients, or they were part of the home buying process when I helped them. I stay in touch with all of my clients so that they know I'm here to help them. Um, and that is it's a situation that I think, when you're in the middle of a grief situation, the last thing you want to do is have to be the one that does all of the research to figure out what your resources are. And
Totally.
um, and I work with an amazing team across the spectrum when it comes to real estate, mortgage lenders, attorneys, HVAC specialists, anybody that has to do with real estate. And so it's great to be able to make one phone call to one
Mm.
person like myself and know that I can bring a team with me to solve the problem.
That's huge because I think about all the legwork that I put in, the hours of research, and who I had to make so many phone calls. And there's just not enough time and not enough of you to go around when you're dealing with a sudden loss. And even, I guess, sometimes with that expected loss, real estate is a very large transaction and can feel very overwhelming to people, especially if they've never done it before or if it's happening under other traumatic situations. So how do you bring them along on the process, especially if there's a trauma? Because I know when I was in grief, I couldn't hear anything. So you really have to focus on building that relationship with your client. How do you educate them in a way that's palatable?
Sure. So number one, I always just show up at the door. There's a lot to talk about over the phone, but it can be very overwhelming,
Mm.
because typically the professionals that you seek out have a lot of information, and it could just feel like overload. So I'll usually say, let me stop over, sit down at the kitchen table or on the couch, and just ultimately hear from them. What are they most concerned about? I like to start there. I love, no matter what the situation is with my clients, I like to live in a worst case scenario world first. Like, what's the worst
Mm.
that can happen? And then how do we work backwards from that and try to continue to eliminate the risk, that would happen. So, just
What
what are
their
their
goal is, like say they wanted to stay in the house and you start
yeah.
with that as your endpoint and then reverse engineer it.
Yep, exactly. So what's the goal and what's your worst fear? Like what's the thing we're trying to avoid and what's the thing we're trying to accomplish? And then
Mm.
anywhere in between that we can land, obviously as close to the goal as possible, but sometimes there are some compromises that have to be made, but making sure it's on a timeline that works for you, that you feel like you have as much education and support as possible. And then once I know those two things, I'm able to work in the back end and do a lot of the legwork so that I'm only bringing the next solution to you instead of more problems.
Mm.
Even in a regular real estate transaction, that's how I like to work. When I know there's an issue, I would much rather make that phone call to you with here's the problem, but here's the three solutions I already found, and let's talk through them and see which one is the best for you versus just calling with the problem.
Right. And going,
So
okay, what do
that
you want to do? Because
yeah,
I don't know what I don't know. And so I
right.
love that you already like focus on mitigating some of that ahead of time. Because again, in
Mhm.
that grief scenario, I didn't have the bandwidth to really understand what was happening to me. And it
Yeah.
sounds a lot more like you're happening with them versus to them. You're not talking at them. So I love that approach. I think it really harkens to just a more holistic experience after loss. And
Mhm.
we all have property, where most of us have property, or an heir or a next of kin that has property. We're all probably going to have to encounter a situation where we have real estate questions, right? So, what are our options when it comes to having property that a loved one leaves us, whether it be through probate or a will, or you have this property and now you have to do something with it? What are our
Sure.
options?
Sure. So, I think most importantly, starting off with, what do you want to do with it? All right. So do you want to keep it? Would you like to sell it? Do you want to access the equity in it? Would you like to keep it as an investment property? There's so many things to do with a piece of real estate. But you know, it's very it's very goal driven. You can, like I said, keep it as an investment property. If you're currently living in the house and you think that you might not want to stay there, number one, we start with the market analysis. So, what is the property actually worth, and then what are debts owed on the house?
Mm,
Because depending on what that difference is, um, you might make a different decision, right? Because if there's a lot of money in the property, and you could use that for um,
funeral
expenses,
services
yeah,
or
expenses
yeah,
related to funeral services, but you don't necessarily want to sell. You still want to stay in the house, right? But you just want access to that money. There are things like, a cash out refinance, or a home equity line of credit, or a home equity loan. Um, and the difference between all three of those is how you want to repay it, right? What's your capacity to repay it, and also what's your capacity
mm.
to take out the mortgage. So,
And
uh,
that's all done through a mortgage lender. That's not necessarily something that you handle, but it's a team
no.
member that you have access to, where you can even just ask those questions and get really good vetted information, right?
Yeah, so mortgage. I have a great mortgage lender that I refer people to for any cash out refinance scenarios, and also just to confirm what's their ability to take over a payment.
Right.
Do they qualify to take out the mortgage payment in their own name, or do they have to just continue to make the payments in order to stay? And then the cash out refinance is kind of cool because you take out the equity, and you basically are taking out a brand new mortgage over a longer term. So it tends to be the less expensive option,
And when we
for
say
the
equity, for the people who are unfamiliar, we just mean the amount of money the house is worth at its current standing.
yeah, the amount of money that it's worth minus the money that the debt that's owed. That's
Gotcha.
basically that difference is what you potentially have access to, a certain percentage of it, depending on the loan type. And then a home equity loan or line of credit is typically done through your bank, where you can go and, same concept, but the repayment term tends to be a little bit shorter, which means monthly payments a little bit higher. So, it's not a one and done. It's really the best that I tell people to do is to explore all two or three options and see what makes the most financial sense to you.
And I love that advice because so often, and again, even in my own situation, it was one piece of advice because I talked to like 36 people, and the only person who wanted to listen to me without getting money gave me this advice. And then, okay, this is what we do. So you're stuck with, oh, this is my only option. When in
Sure.
reality, it sounds like there's so many more options, which is almost overwhelming in a way. So how do you help guide that decision making process for people, right? Like obviously you can't make the decision for them, and we've decided what need is and goal is, but how do we help kind of clear the noise a little bit
Sure.
with all of these big decisions?
Great question. It's actually why I come and sit down at the kitchen table, because when I have a really good understanding of what the goal is, what the personal and financial situation looks like, and what they're trying to avoid, then I'm able to direct them to the right people. And again, working with someone who has a strong team of high level professionals, with like working with them like myself, I know that when I bring that plan to those two or three professionals that I think can give advice, they're going to give you what makes the most sense and not overload you with options, right? And so
Yeah,
I sort of am try to be the filter and make
got
sure that you're not overwhelmed. Coming with solutions that make sense for what your goal is, and not just a solution for the sake of having an option.
right. So even in this conversation is to say, hey, like what are my choices? It's hard to just give an A, B, C, D because it's so nuanced and so personal. Like we could
Right.
talk about all the millions, I'm sure, of options when it comes to real estate transactions, but it really comes down to what the situation is, right?
Yeah, and ultimately, people tend to work off of what can I afford? I mean, even
Mm,
when you're buying a home, it doesn't matter what the interest rate is, and it doesn't matter what the home price is. Honestly, what matters is how much do I have to pay every month, right? Because if you could have the home of your dreams and it was a little bit over budget, but the current interest rates made it affordable, then you doesn't matter how much you're buying it for because the monthly payment is the same. Same thing when interest rates go up, or your ability for a down payment or the different loan program that's available to you. There's a lot of nuance in it, but ultimately, especially the lenders that I refer my clients to, it's like, what can you comfortably afford every month? And let's work backwards from there to figure out what your options are.
So it sounds like a lot of reverse engineering when it comes to dealing with real estate specifically, but loss triggered real estate transactions. Um, so we've reached a point, right, where we've decided we're going to sell the property and we're moving forward. So what does that transaction look like from start to finish? Break it down for the listeners.
Sure. So one of the reasons I love being on the team that I'm on is the approach that we take to a listing. Um, you know, I mean, I just think about putting myself in that position. If I was, especially going through grief, loss, um, getting a house ready to go on the market is a lot of work.
Super
And
stressful.
right,
We just did it, right?
even in the best circumstance, it's a lot of work. And so, all of our listings get a professional staging appointment. And so we send the stager out to the house to go room by room to give you a bullet list for each spot of the house. So you have a starting point and you have a goal.
Mm,
And if that feels like it's too much, especially dealing in a situation where you've lost someone, we have people that can do it for you as well. And
wow.
and I personally feel like sometimes it's worth letting someone else do the work, even if it costs you a little bit of money up front, so that it gets done faster and it's less overwhelming and it's done right. Because it's a lot to go through personal belongings. If you inherit a property that you really don't have any interest in keeping, and the plan is to sell it, if it's full of your loved one's personal belongings, it can be a lot to go through. We have companies that will come and pack things up for you and put them in a storage unit if you need it, so that when you're ready and the time is right, you can go through it. But the things that
Wow.
need to be held back to stage the house are there, and it wasn't on you to go through the whole thing.
And you're
Um,
not feeling like you have to fire sale everything and like
yeah,
making decisions under duress, right? That's a
right.
lot of what this is mitigating that duress and that trauma. And it sounds like you really do a good job of slowing the process down while keeping the timeline moving.
Sure. And when you're putting a house on the market, the sad thing is you actually have to depersonalize it, right? You have to
Mm.
let the consumer imagine their own items there. And so to have somebody to walk into a house and say to someone, um, you know, you need to take out all your family photos from the wall, right? That can be a traumatic experience for someone.
Even
Um,
without loss.
yeah, cleaning out someone's closet.
Mm.
Like changing out someone's room, taking out all of the pieces that made your house a home because they were tied to a sentimental value, that can be a tough experience. On top of it, selling a house that has sentimental value, right? And so, I typically will offer services to my clients that could be triggering for them, to have to do themselves. And so, I might suggest bringing a cleaning person in, bringing in someone that can kind of declutter and pack things up, a
Like a
moving
professional
company.
organizer or
Yeah, an organizer, someone to actually follow the staging checklist. You can have someone meet the stager instead of yourself if you think you want someone to do that for you. And a lot of the vendors that I work with, that I have good relationships with, sometimes they're even willing to, get paid at closing if you don't have the funds up front to do that. And so this industry is all about who you know and the relationships that you develop. And I've worked really hard over the last 6 years to find the right people to refer my clients to.
so it sounds like you really do take that humanistic approach to real estate. How are you putting that out into the greater world? I know that you have an academy that you're training other real estate agents. Is this a methodology that you're teaching them, that very similar holistic way of being?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the way our team operates anyway. We really try to educate the agents in our world that we have on our team. We're about 35 agents throughout the state of Connecticut and growing. And these are the things we talk about on a regular basis. It's not just how to run a comparative market analysis, or to to have a sales conversation with someone that's interested in selling their home. It's how to actually work with people, understanding that most of the time in Connecticut, real estate transactions happen because of life circumstances. Right? Connecticut
Really?
tends to not be a destination site for a lot of people in other parts of the country. And so
What?
surprisingly, I mean, why wouldn't anybody want to live here, right? But it's a great state. We have access, we have quick access to multiple states around us. So it can kind of be like a hub state, very similar to other cities. And in my experience, the most common reasons that people call me are death, divorce, new job, new babies, um, and downsizing because kids leave the home.
Empty nest syndrome.
It's not a phone call like, I wanted to live in Connecticut my whole life. Can you help me find a place? It's like, and there's a lot of people that stay here too. They're just kind of
Right.
moving within the state, which I think is very common, no matter what state you live in. But especially since COVID, there's actually less movement because
Mm.
people can work remotely. And so I'm actually the new job category has kind of fallen to the bottom of the list, and it's mostly death, uh, you know, um,
Divorce, downsizing,
divorce,
the three big
kids.
D's,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. And then there's other situations too, like, loss of job and inability to maintain payments. And so,
Mm.
in a market like this, where real estate prices are at an all-time high in Connecticut, and they've doubled. I mean, really, since pre-COVID to now,
Crazy.
home values have doubled. And so a lot of people are sitting on equity, which is a great time to really look at your situation, because you could make some big moves. Or you could significantly downsize, or you could just cash out and get the money, kind of pay off debt, clean up your life, and get it back on track and start over. So, I think that's why I love what I do the most, is that I kind of never know what I'm walking into when I go to meet with somebody, but I love to just kind of dig deep and find out what's the goal, why are we here, and then I love problem solving.
And it sounds like, at least in my understanding, a lot of real estate agents can get a bad rap, right? It's that, lawyers are sharks and real estate agents, it's all very transactional. But it sounds like you're working for an agency and you're operating under a philosophy that's a lot more humanistic. So people can call you even if they're not ready to move to just ask questions. What are some of the things that you've encountered? Maybe give us like something bizarre, or obscure, something that sticks with you.
I mean, I'll tell you, every day is an interesting story. So, I want to go back to your previous question you asked me, because I didn't quite answer it, which is
Mm,
talking about what we do and how we train our agents on the team. So,
yes.
I think the thing that I'm most passionate about right now, outside of helping my own clients, is really helping an agent who wants to treat this like a full-time professional career, teaching them how to do it, and how to take that holistic approach, and making sure they take the right steps to work with their clients. And so we do have something called the Agent Production Academy. We have our agents going through it the first 90 days when they join our team, and it is amazing, the misunderstandings that are out there from agents and what their job really is, right?
Really?
My job as a real estate agent is not to sell a home. It's not. Like, I can't force you to buy a house. I'm not going to walk in and make you buy something you don't want to buy. I can't spend your money for you. My job is actually to have a fiduciary responsibility to your best interest if you're my client. Of course, if I'm helping you buy something, I'm going to help you get the best deal that I can, and I'm going to make it, but I have so much less control over that. What I do have control over is how you feel about the experience. And
Mm,
that's really what being a professional is. And so with the agents on our team, that's what we stress. How do you show up as a consultant? How do you show up as the professional of choice to help someone navigate whatever situation they're going through, so that at the end of it, they actually feel like they didn't have to do anything. Like, to sit back and say, like, wow, Erin handled all of that for me. And you were only responsible for making the most important decisions, and you felt like you had options.
and are educated and are supported through it, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
especially in grief, like so much of it happens to us. So to be able to have someone kind of project manage the stuff on the back end and let us be the CEO of that decision and really just yes or no things or ask clarifying questions, it's a really beautiful way of doing real estate transactions. And I've personally bought and sold, a couple of properties at this point. But from personal experience, I do have to say it was probably the best experience I've had because you really did slow it up and speed it up or slow it down and speed it up all at the same time. And I don't know a better way of explaining it, but I had so much more of a breadth of understanding, but it moved so very quickly. And I never once felt like I didn't understand or overwhelmed, and it was such a
Yeah.
beautiful way. And to your point about the academy, it's that mitigation of going into a home and telling someone to take the family portraits off the wall. I know I would have been absolutely flabbergasted had someone told me I had to do that in that moment in time. So you're teaching these agents to go in and be a human first and not treat it like a transaction. And that's what makes you guys so successful.
Yeah, well, I think the thing to remember when you are going through, any kind of major financial decision is that you have to remember who you're talking to and, you know, what's their perspective, right? And so I know you and I talked before about when clients call mortgage companies because something happened, right? It's like, the answers that you're getting from a mortgage company as to what you need to do are always going to be in their best interest, right? They want
Mm,
your money. They
they
want
want
you
your
to
money.
they want your money. They want, they want to make sure that they're not stuck with a house that they have to do something with. And so they're going to find the fastest path and with the most amount of pressure to make them whole. And I think no matter what it is, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be grief. It can be really anytime you're in a situation where you don't feel like you know the right thing to do or what your options are, make sure you're talking to somebody who has your back, right?
Mm.
Um, and that no matter what the outcome, it's not going to impact that person significantly. So like for me, there are plenty of times where I go in to a what I think is a listing appointment, and by the end of it, I'm telling them not to sell. I'm
Oh,
telling
wow.
them ways that they can stay
That's
because it's
counterintuitive, right? Like, I
yeah,
wouldn't have
like
assumed that.
no, and it's because I'm not going in worried about myself. I'm going in to do right by you, and help you achieve your goals. So if you tell me you want to stay, I'm going to figure out every way we can to make that happen. Um, and I spend a lot of time going into past clients' houses or people that I know that are just curious about what is their home worth and what do they have access to, right?
Mm.
So when I have a client. That I've taken on, I mean, they're a client for life, and usually, sometimes even monthly, I'm sending them updates on what their home equity looks like. How are they
Wow.
keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak? If a house sells in the neighborhood and your value goes up, great. It's good to know that because there could be projects lingering that you need funds for. And the best time to get access to that money is when houses sell higher in your neighborhood, right? Because as soon as one goes lower, the law of averages brings your house value back down. And so keeping an eye on that on a monthly basis is great because it just gives you options to tap into the money, send your kids to college, right? That's another thing people don't think of for their home value. You can, you
Wow.
know, not just sit on it. You could have a little bit higher monthly mortgage payment, but have access to immediate funds to pay cash for college. And then once you've paid that back down again and the next kid goes to college, pull the money back out again. So it is truly an asset for you and your family to own a
Wow. I don't think I would have thought about it that way because even as you're talking, I'm thinking about the complaint I hear often is the expense of estate planning. So people don't want to do the pre-planning because they can't afford it. Well, what if they drew on their equity and then now have that upfront cost to take care of their estate planning, plus they have the legal paperwork in line to protect the heir, the asset. It just kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. I'm like, why aren't we talking about this
Yeah,
more?
yeah, such a good idea. I mean, that's what there's a home equity loan and a home equity line of credit. A home equity line of credit is take what you need. So when you apply for it, they'll tell you, let's say you have access to $40,000. It's almost like a credit card. You draw it when you need it and then you pay it back and it sits there. A loan is taking out the whole amount and then you start making payments on it right away. So the line of credit is great for things like that. And people forget that they have potential access to that money. And, you know, it just makes more sense to pay a small amount over time than to take thousands of dollars out for something that needs to be done. You know, you if there's a thing that happens in your house, this is another really good point. If something happens in your house and, you know, maybe your initial instinct is to call the insurance company and get them to cover the cost of it, you really need to have an understanding of how much that new premium is going to cost you every month for the
Mm.
work done, and how much is the quote even worth, because sometimes we, you know, we draw against our homeowners insurance, and the cost over time and increased premium is actually more expensive than the project itself. It would be so much better to maybe explore an option with your bank to just take out the money and get the work done,
And that's
for a
something they could
small monthly.
call their real estate agent to ask that question. I wouldn't have thought of that. You're right. I would have defaulted to the insurance agent.
Yeah,
But
I jokingly say to everyone I know, like, think of me like Google when it comes to your real estate needs. So if you were going to go online and ask a real estate related question, just text me instead, because I probably give you the most direct answer and some resources to back it up.
we love that. We love that. So talk to me a little bit about what your future holds with real estate. Where are you going and where do you see this academy and your own stuff going?
I am very passionate about helping other people reach their goals. And so one big thing we're working on right now is, you know, getting this Agent Production Academy up and launched, not just for our own team, but other teams throughout the country, so that there's a solid plan in place to create high quality professional real estate agents, because it's good for everyone. It's good for the business. It's good for our reputation as realtors to actually be doing the right things by our clients. And then, you know, probably some coaching and training opportunities, you know, to help other people on an individual basis to grow their business. Because outside of just loving what I do with my clients, I also am, you know, a top producer in the state. And I think I continue to get a lot of referrals and repeat business from clients because I do right by them. They have a good experience and they trust me, and they know that I have access to resources, and that's, you know, really what it is. I think being a problem solver is what I'm best known for.
I love that. I love that. So, if you could say anything to the listeners and those who are people who've generally lost a spouse or lost a loved one, what advice would you give them from a real estate perspective?
I would say, that it would be really smart whenever you are faced with an unknown, and you feeling like you're in over your head, to just hit the pause button and have somebody come in to your home, or on a Google Meet or over the phone if it needs to be, and
Mm,
just tell your story and let someone else take over, you know? Tell your story, offload that so that you're not worried with the gathering of the information and the processing of everything. Just, you know, tell your story and let someone else go to work for you and present you with solutions so that
mm.
you can go and focus on being with your family, and, you know, and going through the grieving process and doing what you need to do outside of real estate, because it isn't, I'm sure, an overwhelming experience to not know if you're going to have a roof over your head or what to do with the roof over your head, especially if you've never had to navigate that in the past.
Sure. I love that. That's such wonderful advice. I think that we can all take a little bit of that. And even if we're not in loss, just slow the pace down a little bit and on that same page. How do we find you for everyone who's out there listening and so excited to ask you all these million real estate questions? I'm sure your phone's going to be ringing off the hook. How do they find you?
Sure. Well, I mean, my cell phone is a great tool. So my phone number is 860-280-8509. Also, email works great. It's erinanderson1@kw.com. And you know, I'm sure that you'll be able to provide that information as well. I am an agent on the Meali team. We're the number one real estate team in Connecticut. So if you reach out to me and, you know, you're not in an area that I service, we probably have agents in that area. Or I can certainly provide you with a referral to the best agent. That is one good point I want to make, is that not only am I a great resource for here in Connecticut, but I have relationships with agents in every state and even multiple countries, because I'm heavily involved in the real estate community. And so my goal is, again, to have an answer for everything for my clients. And so if you called me and said, hey, my sister's going through something out in Texas, I have a handful of amazing agents out in Texas that I would refer them to who work very similar to me that I would trust with my own family. So, I think it's good to have a starting point. And then again, same concept, reach out to me with the problem and I'll go hand you a couple solutions. And then ultimately you decide who you're most comfortable with.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for taking the time to chat with me and my listeners today. This was really incredible information. And I will pin all of your information in the show notes for you. So this was the very first episode of season 2 for the Happily Never After show. Signing off, this is your host, Kate Mollison, with the guest, Erin Anderson. Thanks again, Erin.
You've been listening to Happily Never After, part of the Xvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode of Happily Never After, as well as the rest of the network at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.